Let's go. Another episode of Blue Gems podcast.
Thanks for coming on, bro.
Taylor here, just crushing it at all dimensions. We're so excited to have you on, bro.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about you and how you got into real estate, where your journey's leading you and all that good stuff.
So probably like some, thought about buying a duplex and naturally settled on short-term rentals. And, you know, me and my wife, we've stayed at 21 different Airbnbs, you know, since 2015. I was looking at our account the other day. So we always, it's our choice of preference. So I think naturally that's why I landed on it. And, you know, once I kind of figured out what I was doing, 400 hours of YouTube videos later, a couple books. So at some point, got to jump in, wrote an offer on a property. We actually wrote 6 offers before we got our first one, but got the first one and came in with that mindset of, you know, hey, I want to buy one a year for the next, 10 years. I'll be great. And then once you get one, you're like, okay, where's the second one at?
Yeah. It's like a tattoo, right? I'll just get one small tattoo and then you're like covered in tattoo.
Yeah, I think the quote is like, it's a mile to the first tattoo and then an inch to the second. And it's kind of what it is with short-term rentals. There's a long buildup. You're like, I don't know, am I going to mess this up? And then you buy one, you're like, okay, let's get 2, 3, 4, et cetera. So did that. And then, just operationally and running short-term rentals, someone reached out to me at a huge firm, and we have been building a short-term rental portfolio, and we have investors that invest with us, and we have a whole team now, and we go out and buy short-term rentals across the country. So we bring in capital, work on building that out into being a really awesome portfolio, completely diversified across the U.S.
Wow.
That's exciting, man.
That's the most exciting answer we've gotten.
Yeah, we haven't had anyone on that's moving like that. So, dude, elaborate some more. Like tell us more about it.
Yeah, so, as we stand today, we have 23 properties in 7 different markets with 8 more under contract. And so, when we're looking to grow, we're just finding these areas where we can get strong cash flows. We want to be able to get multiple properties within that area. And, you have to take into account different risk factors, whether that's regulation. And, obviously for us, we want to make sure that this area has taken a stance on short-term rentals. I think a lot of people get confused in that they're like, oh, well, short-term rentals are allowed, but the municipality hasn't taken a stance. They haven't said yes or no. So it's allowed because they haven't made a decision, but tomorrow they could all of a sudden say, hey, they're not allowed, or they're only allowed in these districts, and you could get in trouble. So for us, we want the municipality to have already taken a stance. And then number 2, what really helps hedge is a place like lodging taxes. So if a municipality has implemented lodging taxes where they might charge $5 a night for every booking, or for, that comes in, they're going to get that revenue for their city. And of course, they're going to get addicted to it. They want to make that, depending on the municipality, it'd be anywhere from $500,000 to, it could drive as much as $3 million a year, depending on how many bookings they get. So
they're not passing up on that cash flow.
Not as a government entity. I haven't seen any government entity give back money before. Exactly. So I don't see them cutting that off. So, that's how we look at these markets. And then, I think it helps too when you look at places with established rental histories and places that people have been vacationing since the 70s or 80s before Airbnb even existed. Short-term rentals have always been around. Airbnb is new and the platform itself, but people have been booking. So those are kind of the different hedges we look at for where to go, and then obviously find, these emerging markets to invest in. So I have a personal portfolio outside of our investment portfolio with our company. So me and my wife have ours, kind of on the side, and I'll always continue to buy more and grow that. Meanwhile, obviously, I don't have as much capital as, the firm does. So, we're continuing to build that and grow that. Whenever I have spare cash, boom, I'll turn around and buy more for me and my wife. And at some point, I think every investor wants to make that trade-off where instead of buying for pure cash flow, you can buy a little bit for pleasure, where it's in a good location, you're okay taking a lesser return. Right now I'm still in the growth phase, so I'm still chasing yield. At the same token, eventually I think it's to make it a lifestyle play where, you have enough cash flow coming in that you can add 1 or 2 and, even if they make single digit returns or break even, you're pumped. It's still real estate.
So you mentioned yield. How are you underwriting these deals? So what is your target return, and how are you looking at a deal to make sure that it makes sense for your investors?
When it comes to underwriting, you have to look at things like interest rates. So every week we are reshopping and requoting interest rates. They have gone up recently on a weekly basis. So that's just as simple as changing the line. Most place sell sheet in on the pro forma. you have to look at what kind of leverage do you want to use. Most places you can't get investment loan without at least 20% down. But from, more of an institutional level, they would want slightly less leverage. So maybe you get into that, 25, 30, 35% down range. Then you're going to balance everything else out that's going to be standard, whether that's property taxes, utilities, all that good stuff. CapEx reserve. So how much money do you want to keep on hand? Obviously, as like a retail investor like myself, I'm not going to have as big of a CapEx budget. I'm not going to set, a huge amount aside. I think as we obviously grow, we have a fiduciary responsibility. And so, you start at the top with purchase price, the interest rate, everything we talked about, then you go down all your expenses. Boom. Now it gives out, hey, here's what we're looking at for projected returns.
So I'm a brand new investor. I just learned about short-term rentals. Why would I invest in your fund versus going out and trying to do it on my own?
Great question. So I think it kind of comes down to a couple of things. First would be time. So, do you want true passive income? So with this, you get exposure to the asset class, and it's a way to have, short-term rentals in your portfolio, whether you also have stocks, bonds, long-term rentals, self-storage, office, anything else. It gives you a really good opportunity to mix this in. Now, obviously, taking on the investment yourself, you're always going to be up more returns. Anything you're able to do yourself and cut that out, you're going to make more. But it's going to require more time, more research, more knowledge. So some people love the idea of Airbnbs, but they're not doing all the legwork, the groundwork, like we have. So if you can just kind of plug capital into a plug and play situation, in essence, they own a fractional share of a bunch of Airbnbs, but they don't outright own their own individual one. So, but as time will tell, of course, we've learned that a lot of investors have, invested, and then they get that itch and will actually go out and find their own Airbnb for them, based on their qualifications, what they're looking for geographically, price point, amenities. So it's another add-on service because we already have the infrastructure and team to do it. Is we're just going to go help people find their own Airbnb, take our knowledge, take our expertise, take our team's skill set, and just apply it for somebody who maybe either doesn't have the time or, the knowledge to do it themselves.
Love it.
Yeah.
So let's just pretend that I'm a brand new investor and I watch this podcast and this looks awesome. I'm like, yo, I'm in. What's the minimum contribution, generally speaking? And what type of yield are they going to be offered?
Yeah. So, minimum in this current one is 25K. Anything above that is acceptable. Our target's always double-digit returns. So, with everything we go after, we want to look at, hey, at the end of the day, can we target double-digit returns? So, that's kind of the big thing of what we're looking for. When we find these properties, we're not trying to find something that's going to return a 5% return. It's just not worth the legwork, anything like that. There's other investment vehicles. There's other asset classes you can go into. So I think what people like about short-term rentals is that upside potential that is there. At some point, the lifestyle does enter it. A lot of investors, we give them a discount to, book and stay at any of the properties within the portfolio. So it's kind of nice that, unlike say, maybe investing in an office building like what we're in today, they're not going to go rent this office building and, put a sleeping bag in here and stay overnight, but they might go want to rent and take a family vacation. So it is a cool opportunity to have that where it is a lifestyle investment where you could still get a pretty good yield and at the same time, get some use out of it at the same time.
Awesome.
Man, I love it.
So you have 23 with this fund, right?
Yeah.
Your firm. What does automation look like? Because that's a lot to manage.
Yeah, we try to use a ton of technology, and every day there's more and more technology and opportunities. So obviously there's guest communication, there's revenue management. Most of this you can automate, but at some point you do still need a human element to it. And I think the team we have in place today and the team we're going to continue to grow will all be strategically picked. So whether it's acquiring the property and having an acquisitions team, and then once we get it under contract and close, they'd get the new tile in, add the hot tub, the amenities. So they'll oversee that. Then the designers come in and they're actually going to pick the decor, the furniture, everything like that. And then once that's done, we'll get the listing ready and then turn over to the property management team. So I think it's just that constant. It goes from one person's department to the next. And so really depending on the life cycle, one department might get backed up. If we have a ton of properties being remodeled, the operations team, we might need to bring in more people because, hey, we have 12 properties being remodeled at one time.
Right.
At the same token, if we're adding more properties, managing them, we might need to bring in more customer service reps to help with the management side. Is where we at in the life cycle, of the portfolio, and seeing exactly kind of, who needs help where. So at some point, every department will be a bottleneck, maybe briefly, and so we try to want to give them the resources to succeed and be successful.
So how big is your team currently? Like, walk me through your org chart.
So currently today we have 15 people. So our two co-founders come from tech, ex-Facebook and ex-Apple. We do take a tech-forward approach to Airbnbs, but with that human operation element. We do have our own internal proprietary software that allows us to underwrite short-term rentals across the US. So underwriting over 2,000 properties a day through our technology. And
wow, we do like 4.
Wow, 2,000.
We do 4.
I know that
that's incredible.
You're not going to be able to share too much detail, but at a very high level, how are you underwriting so many deals in one day?
Yep. So because of some key partnerships and key advisors on our team and on our board, we have MLS access, so we can target key markets. So today, right now, I think the software has about 250 markets in the US. Obviously, that's not everything, but there's just markets we might want to invest in. Analytical tools such as AirDNA, our own internal data. And so what it'll do is cross-compare this 3.2 versus other 3.2s being rented for average daily rate, occupancy, what projected revenue looks like. And then in real time, the system will just take those numbers and plug it into a pro forma. I think what it allows us to do is can't see deals that are worth spending our time on and ones that aren't. So I think Zillow proved the point that you can't buy only based on technology. So we're not iBuying, that's for sure, but the technology does 80% of the work for us. And then that human element, the acquisitions team will go in and actually look at it more. But what's really advantageous is we're not wasting time on deals that no matter what, they're not going to pencil out. They're a -5 cash on cash return. We don't waste time looking at those, but the system might say, hey, look at this deal in, wherever, Indianapolis, and it's a projected 18% cash on cash. Well, we can go in and see the comps that are used and look at it and go, well, this one has a pool, ours doesn't. This one is close to downtown, ours is further out. I don't think it's going to do 80K. It's probably actually only going to do 70, and we'll re-underwrite it. Then once we re-underwrite it, we look at the new return and say, well, instead of an 18, now it's a 12. Well, a deal doesn't look as appealing maybe. Or we might look at the comps and, might be the flip side. We see a 12 and we look at, oh, we have a pool and the comps don't. And so now we can be more aggressive with that list price. Whereas again, the more data points we're able to get, the more honed in on our offers. So other people might say, oh man, I think they paid too much for that. But we might have more data points that say, no, we know that we can do more revenue than this to hit our desired return. So that's kind of the awesome thing about the technology is it allows us just, like I said, see all those deals on a daily basis. Obviously not perfect. We do miss some. Wish we could catch all the deals.
So you mentioned the MLS. So you're not doing any off-market underwriting then currently?
So whether that be a pocket listing, they know we're an active buyer. They know that assuming the inspection doesn't blow up the deal, that we're gonna close. We're not here to retrade the deal or renegotiate or nickel and dime. At the end of the day, we're gonna put our best foot forward and say, hey, this is the offer we can write. It still allows us to achieve our yield and what we want. And as long as, again, goes through the inspection, nothing crazy, we're gonna close. So I think having a assured buyer, somebody like us, is very appealing to agents. And so, definitely something we've continued to do is build our agent relationships across the country. And they know that, hey, if it's a short-term rental in a potentially good market, is, hey, bring us those deals. Obviously they're incentivized too, they get paid for it. But it's just a great opportunity. So yeah, only about 10%'s been off market. Would love to, look at buying more off market, deals and properties. That does require systems, time, capital and effort to build those out. Not saying they're not worth it, but I do think with everything we have on our plate today, it's not something we're pursuing. As time allows, as more capital allows, we might do that, but we're still buying, pretty successfully on market. So I think too, if deals dried up, it might be something to invest in.
For sure. Smart man.
So out of all of the markets that y'all are in right now, which ones are y'all most excited about?
Moving forward or
just current state? So you're in 7 different markets, correct?
Yep. So as we sit today, we're in Joshua Tree, California, Scottsdale, Arizona, Panama City Beach, Blue Ridge, Georgia, the Poconos in Pennsylvania, the Catskills in upstate New York, We just closed in Branson, Missouri, and we're under contract in a couple, other strategic markets. So haven't closed those yet, so nothing official. But yeah, we do have a nice spread. We've got some West Coast, some Northeast, South. But then when you also look at it too, we have a good seasonality blend where in Scottsdale, January, February, March is peak season. Most anywhere else in the country, unless you're at a ski resort, January, February is typically slow, especially if you look at the Pocono Mountains, not necessarily, if you're in the Poconos by the ski resort, sure. But if you're kind of in the Poconos by the lake, it's going to be pretty dead. So as far as getting that seasonality and balancing cash flow, I think that is nice to have. Same thing with having Panama City Beach, or like start looking at other Florida markets like a Tampa, Fort Lauderdale. Same thing, that first quarter of the year is going to be very popular. They want to go to Blue Ridge, they want to go to all these other markets. And that's where, as we look forward, it's kind of that blend of, like I said, coastal, lake, mountain. Now we want to start mixing more like, traditional urban markets where, I think COVID taught us like, hey, stay away from those markets. But there's definitely, at the time of recording this year, there's definitely a rebound in, these, more traditional cities that people are traveling to. So I think for us, it's just smart to incorporate that into our portfolio and have more of these traditional, cities and urban places to invest in.
Yeah, just keep it really diversified, right?
If a hurricane hit and all our properties were coastal Florida, could be a problem.
It's a problem.
Yeah, it's just, doesn't matter how much insurance you have, there's still, time and headaches that go with it. But I think, key is balancing that out. And, like I said, not overexposing to one individual market, one individual style. That's also bed and bath count. Hey, we have too many 1-bedroom condos, or hey, we have too many 6-bedroom, family reunion, bachelorette style mansions. We have too many run-of-the-mill 3-2s. I think it's keeping a balance of each of those in the portfolio, making sure we don't carry too much of one of those, sizes.
Man,
super smart.
You've thought about everything. So as you're thinking about scaling, you went the route of building a fund, going through syndication. So walk me through all the steps and the regulations you had to go through to do something like that.
Well, the good news is we have a CFO who handles all of that. So I can't speak intelligently or accurately to that. I do know there is obviously a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of legal. You're getting the SEC, the IRS, everybody involved. So, it does give you an opportunity to, obviously leverage other people's money. But at the same time, you have to follow that, we can't do that maybe an individual retail investor can do. There's things that, we can do, personally, and in, how we're investing or what we're investing in that, can't do that from more of a, fiduciary responsibility type of things. There's deals I come across, so I was like, man, if I had the capital, I would buy this one. But, from a fiduciary responsibility, unfortunately, we can't buy it, and be like, man, I would buy this, but it just doesn't make sense for us and, staying within the rules and what we're allowed to do. So, there is a lot of legwork. I'm very thankful that we have, somebody way smarter than me to, handle all the legal and the financial. So if you've ever seen Wolf of Wall Street, oversees the finance department, we call him Jordan Belfort's dad. So if you've ever seen Wolf of Wall Street, you know exactly the personality. Sure. And he makes sure to keep us in line. He makes sure that the spending stays in track and we're not doing this crazy, we don't need this $6,000 living room couch. He's over here yelling at the designers like, no, we got to keep this budget in check here if we're going to get the returns we want. So it's always good to have a guy like that on your team. And, we're forever grateful for him. So yeah, we call him Jordan Belfort's dad.
I love it.
I'll put you on the spot. So if you had to buy a property right now, you had to in the next week, you and your wife, not the firm, where would you park your money? What market?
And assuming me and my wife are going to hold this for a long-term horizon, me being a younger guy in my early 30s.
Yep, exactly.
I would go and invest probably in a market like a Florida, probably like a Tampa, a Fort Lauderdale. It's going to be really tough to have any downside appreciation, like very bullish on a place like West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale. Right now, it doesn't make much sense to invest west of 95. And then at the same time, you can't invest in the Atlantic Ocean. Same thing like a market like Tampa, in Pinellas County, which is where Clearwater is. There's only, when you go over the bridge from downtown Tampa, again, there's only so many, land.
Sure.
And so I think that's where I would probably park my money, actively looking in those markets. Obviously still want the best return, but if I had to know that, hey, I need to balance returns today with also the potential to not lose money down the road, I don't see people stopping moving to Fort Lauderdale or West Palm Beach. I don't think people are going to stop moving to Tampa. I mean, I used to live there for 6 years. Definitely a great market. Those are good opportunities that I would think, would be where I would park money tomorrow for me and my wife for a long-term basis.
So you skipped over one city, and I think you know what city I'm talking about. Why is Orlando not on that list?
Even though I live here, I get asked this all the time. Personal experience here. I know a lot of guys who are crushing it, probably like the guys at this table here. I also know people who've gotten their wounds licked. I've seen 5-bedroom properties be priced down all the way to $119 a night. And I struggle to give my 1-bedroom away for less than $119 a night with the value we feel we have in it. So the other thing is institutions. So obviously we're much smaller than, a BlackRock or one of these massive institutions. We're still just growing our private equity firm. But arguably in the country today, two of the most institutionalized markets would be Orlando and would be Joshua Tree, California. And that's where actual institutions are dumping hundreds of millions of dollars. And so when we look at people building entire neighborhoods just for short-term rentals, and I think that gets a little tricky where it's never fun to compete with people who have more money than me. It's not fun. I like going to towns where, I'm competing with Uncle Bob and he took his listing photos with his iPhone 6 and that's my competition. Or, I go to a place like the Poconos or Branson where there's a lot of dated product. There's a lot of 1970s, 1980s, and people have green carpet and they're, bringing in $80,000 a year in revenue. I'm like, okay, maybe let's just put vinyl plank flooring down and
see what happens.
The drapes down and the plaids out, and let's just let the nice, windows and maybe, paint the trim work. And so those are, their institutions obviously are going to come for short-term rentals at some point. It is early. I think, like we always say, people ask, and as a washed up baseball guy, I always like to say we're in the second inning right now is about how I look at it for short-term rentals.
Wow. Second inning.
I mean, that's exactly what Rob and Steven said too.
Rob and Steven said in the second inning too.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask you that was my next question. Like how far?
Currently today, if you go look at Brian Chesky's last CEO of Airbnb last call, like there's still a supply and demand imbalance today. So people are like, oh, Airbnbs are saturated. I'm like, not according to the numbers, they're not. There's still more demand than there is supply. I think he said we're about 1 million homes short. Like we need 1 million people tomorrow to list their home on Airbnb just to create equilibrium.
Yeah, over 1 million hosts is still required to meet that demand.
Yeah, and that's assuming future demand doesn't increase.
Yeah.
That's just to match today's. So,
and it's trending as more demand.
Of course,
because what we saw in
100%.
COVID was that people wanted more flexibility. And so what does that do for Airbnbs? That makes them even more attractive. People have a hybrid work environment, or they're able to work entirely from home. And so now you're able to travel more, and naturally demand is increasing.
And some international travel is still not open for some countries still, so
yeah,
wild.
I think that. And then when we talk about institutions, outside of, Orlando, Disney and Joshua Tree, we've talked to a huge institutional, real estate company before. They're a multi-billion-dollar company, and they're like, yeah, we don't get involved in an asset for under 50 million. So, I mean, just think about that today. Like if you needed to spend $50 million in short-term rentals as your part of your quote unquote, your firm, where are you going to go tomorrow or today to get $50 million worth of short-term rentals? It doesn't exist. You're either buying single family homes one at a time or as quickly as you can, and that's going to take you a while, or you have to go out and build these entire neighborhoods. So I think our kind of thesis is, hey, if we go build this awesome portfolio that has 50 to 100 short-term rentals across the US, if you would build a condo, you probably need to build a couple of them for 20 million. Where are you going to get into short-term rentals? So I think that's where the huge opportunity is and why we're so early. It's not multifamily. It's not storage. It's not office. It's not retail. These are very established real estate asset classes. Short-term rentals it's just so new, and institutions aren't here. Once institutions get here, once lending gets easier, I think we've all had our lending horror stories with short-term rentals, and we all know how difficult it can be. Once that becomes as mainstream as buying, a self-storage facility, a multifamily, a duplex, or even a long-term rental, again, it's going to continue to make the asset class more mature. Institutions will get involved because lending's easier.
So when do you think that will be? Because long-term rentals have been around for ages. And if you go to Fannie and Freddie to sell your loan, as a third party, they're going to use the rents to qualify you for the loan. But they haven't done that yet for short-term rentals, aside from some commercial products. So when do you think that will be?
Yeah, I mean, our kind of thesis is maybe somewhere in the 2 to 5 year range. We wanted to actually prove a point today and just see is what are people's appetite to buy a short-term rental based on the yield. So every real estate asset class trades on yield. It doesn't trade on appraised value. So if you look at a self-storage facility or a duplex, they're going to look at what's the net operating income, and then they're going to buy off it, and there's some sort of that's the pull.
We say all the time, like the appraised value in today's market is almost irrelevant from the standpoint of we're buying based on a cash on cash return. So if an appraiser is going to come in and tell me that the property is worth $50K less than what I think it is based on comps, which may not even be on Airbnb or may just be a primary residence, is not relevant to what I'm trying to do. So I'm just wondering when lenders will have that same opinion, because historically 1 to 4 units has always been considered residential. And so you're basing it on comps and not NOI.
Yeah, I mean, at some point lenders will. I think right now the only time getting into that commercial lending space is they're utilizing their DNA, and then what a lot of them will do is discount it somewhere between 20 and 40%. Look at what your DSCR ratio is, and see is, hey, does this work? So some lenders are branching out. I think there is a prime opportunity, kind of quote unquote being first to market. You know, if you can be the first lender to emerge in the space as taking on short-term rentals, I think they're going to make a killing, because everybody will go to them. We all know the struggles, those of us who are actively buying, how much of a pain it can be. It's definitely different from traditional lending. And if you can be that first institution to understand the asset class, take on the risks, but also capture the upside, I think that institution, that, you know, that bank, that firm, that lender, that broker, whoever it is going to be absolutely on fire, because everybody's going to go to them and then they're going to get copied. But it's always fun to be first to market. It's not as fun to be second, third, fourth, et cetera.
Lenders, listen up.
Right. Yeah.
Man, what an opportunity.
Yeah, that would be a game changer for sure.
I think unfortunately they have people they have to respond to. So, you know, there might be some entry level or low level guys on the totem pole who are like, man, we should get into this space. There's so much opportunity. And the guy at the top there, he loses his cushy job. So, but at some point somebody will make that leap. Like in everything, somebody makes that first risk, and it'll be awesome when it does, because that person's going to get a ton of business, and it's going to make it easier for, you know, investors like us and, you know, regular investors, everybody.
Speaking of like shifting focus or taking risk, right? Would you ever consider an STR, like a luxury STR? And what's your thought process on that?
Yeah. You know, personally, I think it'd be pretty cool. You know, you can get a little trouble is what happens when the market softens. I think even looking right now, when you look at the price cuts that are on, you know, Zillow, Redfin, a lot of them are coming from that $1 million plus right now. If you are wanting to buy right now and you can afford that 1 to 2 million, there's a lot of opportunity to pay very less than asking price right now. It just exists in the marketplace. I think that's a very soft area. There's not a lot of buyers in 1 to 2 million anyway. And the fact that, you know, now there's multiple inventory, you know, it's hard. So they're doing a lot of price cuts. If you have a unique product and a unique location, whether that's oceanfront for luxury or a ski resort or something that makes you different, I think it gives you so much upside. The biggest advantage with luxury properties is I think you can differentiate even more from the others. When you have a 3-2 in a market with 500 other 3-2s, it gets really hard to differentiate, because you might do one thing and then everybody else does it. You look at a place like Gatlinburg, and at one point everybody thought, oh, I'll be different. I'll put a movie theater in mine. Mm-hmm. And now you look and it's probably like, I don't know the numbers, but probably half the market has movie theaters.
Maybe
so now,
more, yeah.
Exactly. So if you Google search and people are like, oh, this Airbnb doesn't have a movie theater, I'm not going to stay here. This thing sucks. Yeah. You know, so it's kind of seeing, but within that luxury, you have a bigger space, you have a bigger lot, you have a little bit more room to play. And so I think naturally that allows you to board in the backyard of some things, to a miniature golf course, to put, you know, a pickleball court in the backyard, a basketball court, like do these other cool things. You know, if you have an oceanfront location, you know, you can cater events and do, you know, little weddings or gatherings. So there's so many more opportunities, I think, to be high end. And that's where investing in luxury short-term rentals also is a little bit of an art form. The numbers might tell you like, this doesn't make sense, but if you go execute a plan, and that's where the art side of it comes in, your returns are through the roof. So I really think investing in luxury becomes less about the numbers and more about the art. I think you can only, you know, at the end of the day, you can only get X for a 3-bedroom in this market. Like people just aren't going to pay. But with that luxury, you know, it's almost uncapped.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I'm pretty bullish on, transitioning into luxury STR space, less competition. I think better quality tenant and, just something that I would be a lot more proud of.
Also more particular, I would say when you, that was one thing I have noticed when you look at the reviews on those luxury properties, we have there's cleanliness, there's location, there's all that stuff. The little one there called value. I think that gets tough when somebody's dropping, $2,000 a night. It's got to be $2,000 a night in their head. And unfortunately, I think some people come from different backgrounds. So it's probably the only quote unquote real drawback I've seen is that, maintaining that 5.0 rating on your Airbnb is going to be a little tougher because I think you'll get some 3s and 4s for value. Now, obviously, if the place is very clean, if the location's prime, those are always going to stay 5. And overall experience might still be 5. But I think unfortunately, hey, we want to drive revenue, we want to get $2,000-3,000 a night, but we better deliver $2,000 to $3,000 worth of value. And so I think that can be tough at times with that luxury, there because there's only so much you can do. But at the same time, if you're the only 5-bedroom and somebody wants to book, you're going to price that thing as high as you can. That's the best part about dynamic pricing. It's supply and demand. And if there's not a lot of 5-bedroom ocean fronts and it's Memorial Day weekend and you're holding out for a high price and somebody wants to book, they're going to pay $2,000 a night because you're the only one available.
Yeah. And I mean, I think because you are going to be competing with less other properties, right? You'll have options to hire a strong team and offload some of that, So I'm pretty bullish on it. I'm curious to see what happens.
Yeah, I think you have a good thesis there. It's definitely something we've looked at. I think for us, we did have internal discussions. Do we want to be maybe like a Wander, one of those that just does luxury short-term rentals only? Do we want to just maybe add a couple luxury into what we do? I don't know. Our bread and butter is, just looking at the data, finding these opportunities. I think it could be a diversification for us down the road is non-traditional markets, but where people still go and maybe you're appealing to nurses or mix in some midterm rentals and tons of opportunity in that space. And that, 30 day to 6 month rental range, there's huge opportunity.
Yeah. Aiden and I talk about that
We
all the
love midterm rentals because we feel that it is an asset class that literally no one is doing. No one is talking about it. No one is fulfilling the demand. And
you always want to be first.
And you want to be first to market. And the trend that I personally feel is, again, as people become more flexible with their workplace, the demand for a midterm rental and people wanting to go and visit numerous cities and be able to work out of those locations for an extended period of time, maybe in that 3 to 6 month period, will become more and more. And so if you can get first to market and fill that demand, you'll make a killing.
Now the opportunity I've seen young professionals build an e-com business and sell it. And, one guy I know, and, I've kind of just stayed in touch, loosely through social media. He wanted to go travel and he's like, man, I'm going to go spend 30 days here. And then I'm going to go spend 30 days here. And so now you can kind of check all those off. And he lived out of, 10 or 12 different Airbnbs for an entire year. He's over in Europe. He was over in New York. He was over in California. He was in Texas. He was in Florida. Just going to all these different places. And I think it's because of having that. At the same time, I've also seen somebody who's like, hey, I want to spend 6 months in Europe and then I want to spend 6 months here. And, again, so now you have that opportunity is to post up at an Airbnb for 6 months in Europe and, explore, be immersed in that culture, only rent to traveling nurses, on these 30, 60, 90, 120 day contracts or whatever it might be. So definitely think it's underserved. Definitely think you're onto something. Don't know that I'm going to be the one to put my foot out there. I might try and come in second or third behind you guys, but curious to watch, somebody kind of go all in because you'll definitely make a killing. And then people like me, you'll catch up, but we won't make a stronger return.
First to market. Yeah, I think it was already happening pre-COVID, but I think COVID kind of accelerated that trend because what employers did was say, hey, we learned that you guys were able to work from home productively. Mm-hmm. And so now you have more opportunity to do that on your own. So I'm a brand new investor. I just learned about short-term rentals. What would be your advice for me?
The path I took, I'm not saying it's the best path, but I think the path I would take is I started out and probably, like I said, watched about 400 hours of YouTube videos, rotated between about 4 or 5 different people. Somebody might be putting out good content, but at the end of the day, it's their one experience, and that doesn't mean it's the only way to get it done. So that's why I would definitely recommend watching multiple different people, because they're going to offer different segments. I know you guys are obviously diversifying to different parts, but there's not a lot of people, a lot of people who got their start in Airbnb, they might have 5 to 10 in one market or in 2 markets. So when they talk about their experience, it might be a little different, and there might be things that they did 2, 3, 4 years ago that you can't do today. So that's why, again, I do that. I was reading tons of blogs, Bigger Pockets forums, even, bought a couple books and read them as well. So I think immersing yourself in as many different mediums as you can is what I would do. However, what I do see a lot of investors do is kind of over analysis paralysis. At some point, you got to jump in. But what I always say is learn enough that you're not going to drown. You're not going to be Michael Phelps when you first get into the pool, but know enough that you're not going to drown, but just enough about each category of the business to get by. Nothing will ever replace, hands-on experience. And, I thought I, didn't really know what I knew after the first one we ever bought, but then it was boom, instant learning, and made it easier for the second one, which makes it easier for the third. It makes it easier for the fourth. And then it just becomes, very, back of the hand studying, keep watching the new video. You miss out on opportunities. Sideline rates rise, but they know enough, and they're just going to keep studying, keep watching the new videos, and then you miss out on opportunities. Interest rates rise, prices rise, whatever it is, you just lose out on opportunities. And at some point, you got to take the risk. It is an investment. At the end of the day, it's the same as if you buy a stock; it could go down. But do your research, know enough, don't drown, and you'll do fine once you're treading water and getting inside.
Knowing what you know now, if you can go back in time to when you first started, what would you do differently?
I'd buy a lot more. Rates are going to double, taking out every loan from friend and family and being like, we have to buy now because rates are going to double and prices are going to. So if I knew what I knew now, I would. I also think too, operationally, I'd have more systems. I would say that I didn't come in as systemized as I am, whether that be with, how I handle check-ins, how I handle, setting up a property, how I handle communication with cleaners. I think I kind of was just like, hey, I'll figure it out as I go. And like, hey, other people did this and I'll try that. Naturally going to happen, and build a system to not work, and you're always going to make tweaks. I mean, we're even making tweaks to our system today. I think that's naturally going to happen. And every time you go into a new market or a new place, you're always going to learn something new and add a system. And I think that's where, I would definitely do is build a system to start. Might not be the right system or the best system, but have a system. And that's going to really help, again, just accelerate your growth as you continue to grow your short-term rental portfolio.
Love it.
The year is 2027. Where is Taylor Jones?
I mean, hopefully on a golf course somewhere. So personally, what does it put us 5 years from now here? I'm hoping at this point we, maybe have had a nice exit on our portfolio at the firm. Personally would love to have, continued to build my own portfolio. Ideally, I'm in a place where I'm not required to work. Knowing my personality, I don't think I'll ever quote unquote retire, but I think it would be nice to just have that opportunity to not say yes to meetings I don't want to do and not work on projects I don't want to do. But I don't see myself as ever stopping. I think again, when, cash flows, exceed life expenses, that's where you can start making those lifestyle investments. And if you can buy it and, have that opportunity, that's where, like I said, finding that 0% return property and you just go use it, X amount of time, or you have, a place, out in the harbor in Maine, or you have a place in, San Diego or wherever your lifestyle takes you. Get a place internationally. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah. I would love to own internationally too, for sure.
100%.
So last question, it could be about real estate, life, relationships, anything. What's one blue gem, the last blue gem you want to leave with the audience?
Find something that you enjoy doing. And for me, I've, bartended through college, been in the service industry. I've done sales work. And I think, this is really where I was meant to be. And so if you're not finding where you're at, is just go pursue it, go try. Like, I had no idea if short-term rental was going to work. I didn't know if our first one was going to be successful. but you got to make the leap.
So true.
Because if you never actually give it a try, you never know if it could have been. And I think a great quote I had is, there's no such thing as losses. They're only learning experiences. And so even if that first property, we would have lost 10 grand on it, it wouldn't have been a loss. It would have been a learning experience. Because I tell you what would happen, definitely wouldn't have lost 10 grand on the second one. If that was our experience. Not everybody's obviously going to hit a home run like we did on our first one, but that's the biggest thing I would say is, in anything, whether it is short-term rentals, find something you like doing. You can really be successful and carve out a niche in something that you enjoy doing every day.
Love that, man. And where can people find you?
I hang out on Twitter. That's where I'm putting out content daily on everything short-term rentals. Really feel like the more I give back, rising tide lifts all boats community. So I'm at Mr. Jones, STRs is where you can find me on Twitter.
Boom.
Boom. Love it.
My man. Thank you
Man,
so much,
what an
bro.
episode.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on.